Shelter. FootyCast live from BackChat Studios. That's the Southern River Band. We're not getting much of them at the moment because we kept getting copyrighted on YouTube, but that's okay. We're here. Mark Reddings, Will Schofield. How are you, Skeeter?
G'day, Scoey. Nice to be here, and you've got the great man on your chest, Daniel Ricciardo, part of the BackChat exclusives of 2022.
Big list.
Plenty of stuff to talk about in sport. And if you're going to break it down, it's the Jack Ginnivan case, it's the Test cricket disaster in Delhi. There's a bit bumping around and lots of opinions on both those subjects.
Yeah, we're going to get right into that today. You can watch us on YouTube if you are listening to us. We've got us filmed in all our glory. Skeeter's in a beautiful linen blue shirt today. I've got no shoes on. That about sums up where we're at right now. You can listen to us as a podcast if you are watching us on YouTube. Shelter's Summer of Sour. Last week we heard Skeeter a little bit teased out a little bit more of what he thought about a sour, which sounds impressive, I think. He just starts growing on him. So I believe it is still summer, just February.
Yeah, no, we've got a bit to go.
Couple of, maybe a week or so to go. We're looking forward to getting down to Shelter in a little bit. We're going to do a season opening down there, Skeeter, which is going to be good fun.
That's going to be, I'm really looking forward to it, the long weekend.
I've seen the itinerary. So we've got, like I said, I think we do have you out the front of Shelter mowing the lawn out there on the Victor lawnmower. We've got Skeet doing a jetty jump down at Busso. We've got Skeet, I believe, skydiving out of a plane. We're doing a one-on-one interview with the Lord Mayor of Busselton. I don't think it's Lord Mayor.
Are you going to just do anything to participate?
Someone's got to organise this, Skeeter.
We
got an autograph table down there just for Mark Reddings. I think life-size.
No
poster.
selfies, just autographs.
Well, would you like to do some selfies?
No, I'm happy to. So, okay, I'm looking forward to it because it's Busselton's beautiful spot. I haven't been to Shelter for, I reckon, 12 to 18 months. So looking forward to it.
It's going to be good down there. Shelter, born and brewed in Busso. Make sure you get online and check out their Summer of Sour. There's plenty of prizes to win over there. Let's get right into it, Skeeter. I think we jump straight into the Jack Ginnivan suspension and probably more broadly the illicit drug policy surrounding that. How have you seen this sort of develop over the weekend? I've got some specific thoughts about the drug policy, but also how this is actually eventuated with Jack doing an exclusive with Channel 7 over the weekend.
Well, that's just another tangent altogether, isn't it, the way that unfolded with 7, and really interesting on that front. It's one where Darcy Moore's come out this morning and said, look, it's a grey area for the players. So automatically that makes me think this has to be looked at again. I know the CBA with the players, they're reviewing the whole policy, and that will be formulated at a various stage of this year. Being filmed in the toilet of a Torquay hotel, I mean, it's pretty poor form from Jack, obviously, for taking drugs, in my opinion. He's surely there's enough education. B, obviously, the perpetrator or the person who took those images. As to how this plays out now, I guess having listened to Eddie Maguire speak this morning, I totally get the point. When this policy was talked about, and he was president, I think he was 33, and a lot of the presidents, when he was starting his journey, were a lot older, he said there's a problem with drugs, with recreational drugs, and they didn't quite understand it. But, of course, given his age bracket, he knew more about it. And back then, of course, there wasn't any evidence via phones, which is now very much an issue. Shane Mumford, Bailey Smith, now Jack, have all fallen foul of that. Other people in the community will say, well, you shouldn't be taking drugs. If I got caught taking drugs, I wouldn't have a job tomorrow. I think that'd be the case for a lot of us. Yep. So if there was a simple answer, Scully, I guess we have to lean on you, to be honest with you, with what you've been through and what you have seen in the football industry to maybe explain to us whether the policy works and whether it needs changing.
Yeah, it's a complex issue, isn't it? Before we get into illicit drug policy, I did just want to touch on the coverage and how this is actually eventuated. So, Jack Ginnivan gets filmed doing drugs in the toilet. That's happened. We now know that's happened because Jack's confirmed it. I haven't seen any footage. There hasn't been any footage around. But yet Jack is rolled out on Channel 7 with Channel 7 Melbourne with an exclusive report, and there's two grave-looking reporters that introduced the story. That there's another reporter with a microphone in
McCallum,
Jack's face. Then there's another reporter doing like a colour piece down at the Torquay Hotel. It was, I think, a big blow up. For me, it looked like Channel 7 had the footage. Someone sent them the footage.
It was being flogged around apparently, or certainly offered to networks. So obviously, there's, I'm not saying blackmail, but there's certainly...
Well, there's an agreement being done between the Collingwood Football Club or Jack Ginnivan or both and Channel 7. Hey, if we come and give you an exclusive, you're not necessarily going to release the footage, because stuff like this, footage just goes rampant, and I certainly haven't seen it. I haven't been looking that hard for it, but the Bailey Smith stuff, that was everywhere. Everyone could see
So
that.
Seven essentially saying has bought the footage off whoever it was and have agreed not to distribute it or not to release it. Is that what you're
Wouldn't have a
understanding?
clue if they've bought it, but if someone sent it to them and then they have it in their possession and then they go to Collingwood and media organisations do this.
Of course.
They go, hey, we've come across this footage, and whether that be West Coast or Freo or anyone, we've got it. We're obliged as a news organisation to run this story. Would you like to be involved? I believe that's how it happens.
Yeah, I'm just a bit confused. As you say, if he wasn't actually visual in the footage, which
No,
I
no.
believe was the case.
Well, correct, but it's more. It hasn't been distributed socially, so I just find there hasn't been that much chat about how this is being covered. I just found it really bizarre. There's not many things like that where the players coming out saying, "Oh yeah, that did happen." Yet there's no footage attached to it, and you've got these. It's like it's a funeral being presented on Channel 7. Jack Ginnivan's confession. I don't know. I found that quite weird. But let's get into the actual crux of the issue, which is the illicit drug policy. He hasn't been charged specifically under the illicit drug policy because he didn't test positive to drugs. Now, he's been given a strike, but he's been charged with being filmed doing drugs.
Conduct unbecoming, is that how it sort of
Yeah,
falls
so
under?
I don't think that's necessarily under the illicit drug policy. The strike that he's received has, and that's meant to put him on due warning, but he hasn't tested positive under the illicit drug policy. So the illicit drug policy was something, like you said, that was introduced in the 2000s in an attempt to mitigate the risk of an issue that was rearing its head, and they didn't want to get it out of control. The AFL put their hand up, and the illicit drug policy is administered by the AFL. It's not, you see the Willie Rioli example, that was through WADA. Now, that was an illicit drug, but that was through the performance enhancing drug policy, which is WADA, ASADA, which is now the Sports Integrity Australia.
And that was a match day testing?
No, that was during the week.
Oh, during the week,
Initially, it was during the week, and he did whatever he did with his sample because he thought it was an illicit. Anyway, that's not under the illicit drug policy. That's the performance enhancing drug policy. They're different things. So the illicit drug policy is administered by the AFL. They created it. They administer it. Like, they test for it. In order, is it a public relation policy? Is it a player care policy? Asking those questions to myself. I don't know if it's either. It's certainly the AFL trying to do the right thing. I don't have a better solution than what they're currently doing, which is a 3-strike policy. They aim to keep players confidential. If players do test positive to drugs, they try to keep those names away from the public, at least initially.
Yeah, but the argument coming from a lot of clubs going back a long time is that they, as in the clubs, are kept out of the loop when a player strikes, and therefore the support network doesn't come. Now, are you
the club
supportive
doctor
of that?
knows.
Yeah, that's one person.
Yeah. So my understanding under the policy is the club doctor will find out under the first strike, and that's to help the player make better decisions. It's a health-based policy. Second strike, the club CEO finds out, but the club doctor also knows. And then the third strike, and there's some fines and suspensions related around that second strike. The third strike, we believe, after having a bit of a look around, we think it's a 12-month suspension. The CEO already knows. Third strike. We haven't seen a third strike, certainly not recently, anyway. And there's been rumours around players third striking, but there hasn't been a public third striking of a player because the AFLPA have been incredibly strong around protecting the mental health of players. Now, I know people listening will go, mental health, that's just something that gets rolled out around illicit drugs. And I can't really argue against that.
No. And there is an element to it. I mean, Bailey Smith used it, and Jack Ginnivan previously spoken about it. So I'm not dismissing that, but I'm also not linking the use of drugs to mental health. So I think there's you have to be careful of trying to put the two into one.
That example is a good one, though, just looking at the way the situations have been handled. They're quite similar. There was a video of Bailey Smith. There was a video of Jack Ginnivan. Bailey Smith, whether it was, I don't want to say a tactic, but whether it was the mental health element, where that fits, I do think there is a mental health element to drug use, but where that actually fits with Bailey, only Bailey would know. But you and I can't really discuss where that would fit with him. But Jack has effectively come out, said, that was me. I take responsibility. I want to get better. I don't want to do the wrong thing again. He's clearly sorry he got caught. I've had some discussions over the weekend. Oh, he's not sorry he did it. He's sorry he got caught. Of course he is. If he was sorry he was doing it, he wouldn't have been doing it in the first place. So he's done it. That's a fact. I mean, he's said he's done it. It's illegal. So the fact when you make the decision to do it in the first place, of course he's not going to be sorry he's doing it. He's doing it in the first place.
I said on radio this morning that I'm just saying it without having evidence, apart when Jack's come out, but AFL footballers over summer, not everyone, not some, probably a small minority, but were doing drugs.
Yeah,
that's just going on society on the numbers, isn't it?
Yeah. So yes, it is. The devil's advocate, the alternative to that is, well, don't do drugs, and you're a professional athlete. You paid a lot of money. You paid a lot of money to play football, but also be a role model to young people. So doing drugs goes against both of those things. It doesn't help your performance as a footballer, and it certainly doesn't set a good example for young people.
So talk me through, and again, I'm a bit, I guess, different generation, but so the reason these young players are taking the recreational drugs, if we want to call them that, or illicit drugs, is because if you're drinking beer, albeit shelter, tastes great, but the component of, the skin folds, which I know aren't supposed to be talked about, is it that reason that the players historically have taken those drugs, because obviously there's a euphoria that comes with it, but also the lack of body fat that comes with... No? Nothing to do with that?
I'd be very surprised if it was body fat that was leading people to take illicit drugs.
As opposed to drinking?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if that's a thing. I would say the population of AFL footballers, 18 to 34-year-old men in the men's comp, women, same thing, same age group. That's a risk-taking age group to start with. You've got to be a risk-taker to be a professional athlete, and that's in most times a good thing. That you have to want to beat people. You have to be competitive. You have to push things to the limit. And when that flows into off the field, you see circumstances that, because of the public eye of it, decisions get made like this, which I'm not going to sit here and defend it.
But look, trying to explain it, so we're trying to understand it from my point of view. And again, maybe but we talked about Bailey Smith, Jack Ginnivan, and even going back in time, Ben, with Cousins, with being the poster boy, having that adulation at a young age. I don't know if there's any link, but those sort of guys, Bailey Smith, his profile went through the roof.
I just don't think there's any correlation between being an AFL player and doing drugs. There's a correlation between being a young person and in a certain age bracket and some people doing drugs. Like that happens. If you're going to sit here and deny that people of a certain age who are out drinking inebriated don't do drugs because you paid a lot of money, that doesn't make any sense.
There's enough education though, isn't
there?
In
fact, it probably goes the other way. It's a higher risk for AFL players because they're getting paid money. They have the expendable income. They're out,
and they're so disciplined for probably nine months a year.
So they're binge drinking, right? And so I just think it's an environment that lends itself to those sort of activities. So is that the right thing? It's certainly not. No, it's in no way condonable. Like, you can't actually condone it, but does it happen? Yes. You can't sit here and close your eyes and think that 850 people in that age bracket who are high risk takers and high income earners don't do drugs. It's just not going to happen. So the way that I was asked about it yesterday, and I hadn't really thought about my answer, it just sort of came out, was we had someone call in 6PR, and he was a father of children. He was a coach of young players, and he said it should have been a longer suspension. 2 weeks is just a slap on the wrist. Like, what are we actually doing here? I couldn't argue with that. No. It's not how I feel. Like, I can't say he should have been given a 12-week suspension because I don't. That's not my impression. But I can't actually argue against it because I can see from a coach of young people and a father that you want an example made out of people that are in the public eye. But that's not how I feel. I said, and my response was, if you're going to be teaching and talking about this sort of stuff with young people, and whether it be your children or whether it be people you're coaching, I think there's unfortunately a lot of bad shit in this world, right? And there's a lot of mistakes you can make. And if you're teaching and coaching and talking about don't make mistakes, I think that's a difficult road to go down. It's not just drugs. any situation out there for young people. There's a lot of situations they have to wade their way through, and they're probably going to make mistakes in life. I personally will be trying to teach my children about when mistakes do happen, do the right thing, right? And don't break the law and don't do drugs and all of that, of course. But if things happen and you do the wrong thing, it's for me, it's about how you handle yourself. Can you take responsibility? Can you learn? Can you be a better person? Like all of that. And it might sound like I'm being soft if we apply those things to Jack Ginnivan. Like it might sound I'm being soft and ex-player looking after him, but I genuinely, I think people are allowed to make mistakes. I think you and I have been doing this a long time, that people are allowed to stuff up.
Yeah.
And everyone does. And so what is it? Do we just punish more and more and more, and that gets it out of the game or people or society? Is that what? Is that how you do it?
But look, the caller, I think I agree. The caller's point is very valid. And if you said to the caller, would a 6 to 8 match suspension been more in keeping? Something that is, 2 weeks 2 matches as it stands. I know there's the practice matches which you can wipe really, and there's a fine element involved.
$5,000 suspended, which means nothing.
Nothing. So I think it's skinny. And I'm not saying you should give the kid life and there should be education, but I think the public, wants to see if that's a 2-week suspension for that, albeit he was photographed and he's admitted to it. Yeah, there's a question I think that needs to be discussed about the length of penalty.
It goes back to Eddie McGuire's point though. Let's give him 8 weeks, right, for being videoed doing drugs.
And he's admitted to it.
Yeah. So don't do drugs.
Yeah.
Right? That fixes that. But if there are other instances of this, Eddie McGuire has a point. If you're an opposition fan, if you're someone who's got that in you, just go hang out in some toilets down in Melbourne, find the Collingwood boys, see if you can find someone doing drugs, video them, hold it to prelim final week, or hold it to the round before finals. You know he's getting 8 weeks.
I agree.
It makes it a very, very interesting environment.
How many times, briefly, before we wrap it up, how many times do you reckon you were drug tested on a given year?
Illicit drug policy, probably 4 to 6. And that's inclusive of post pre-season. It was pretty extensive, 6 times a year, which is, once every 8 weeks.
Do you ever, and this is a bit like me, when I'm driving through an RBT and you haven't drunk anything.
All the time.
I still get a sense of anxiety about...
Illicit drugs are a pretty easy one. You know if you've done them or not.
No.
Right?
Totally.
Performance enhancing ones.
Peter Bowl.
Mate. And the illicit drug policy it's a local testing. It's administered by the AFL. ASADA, WADA, if you have anything in your system, if you've had a milkshake that's got a little bit of EPO floating around it, God forbid, see you later. And your reputation's a lot worse than if you get done doing a line in a toilet at Torquay Pub. Yeah. So, look, there's a lot. We can probably go on about this a lot. There's a lot of risk for AFL players. There's these policies they have to abide by. Is there a better solution? I don't know if there is, because I don't rule. I never, not drugs, anything. I don't rule by the stick. I don't put the boots in. I think people are allowed to make mistakes. If Jack Ginnivan in 3 weeks' time gets videoed down at the Torquay Pub,
he deserves to get a decent whack.
12 week him, years suspend him, because he hasn't learned, he hasn't taken account, he hasn't shown accountability for his actions. That's when you can sink the boot in. But if people do something the first time, I don't know what an 8-week suspension does there. Other than show
send a message. Does it send a message to other players, or you still think they'll make the same blue?
I don't know.
No, look, and you know what? It is. You don't have the answer. I don't have the answer. But I think it's a discussion that I think it's worth having. The greatest thing about this segment is I haven't heard Travis Kelce come out of the woodwork. It's been very.
Don't get your finger off that. This is right in my realm over there, Daniel. It's been a good chat. Anyway, I don't know. Good luck to Jack Ginnivan, to be really honest. But
he looks like a good kid. As I said, I've got 22-year-old daughters tomorrow, actually. Happy birthday, girls.
Happy birthday, girls.
Yeah, the twins. They don't do drugs. I mean, when I say that, I'm pretty confident. But they're up class, they're upstanding citizens. That being said, you just, for his parents, and he looks like someone you'd want at your footy club. Put it that way. If he was available to a WA club tomorrow, Do you reckon what's happened in the past 24 hours would stop you taking it?
No, absolutely not.
No.
No.
In fact, in many ways, I think, you know what? It's a kick in the backside he probably needed.
That will be a good way to finish this convo. How he reacts to it. Does he become a better person, a better player? Does he make the same mistake again? Does he go on to be captain of Collingwood? Like that will, time will tell whether or not this is a good punishment or not a good punishment. If it's too lenient, he probably makes the same mistake again, or someone at Collingwood does, or another player does, and the proof's in the pudding, probably.
I'll tell you what he's also going to cop. Given the public nature of it and Collingwood, and the sledging he's going to get just through fans. It's
already cops it, doesn't he?
No, he does. That's what I'm saying. He already cops it. He knows what's coming his way. He's, you do the crime, you pay the time in a public sense, and he'll be asked a few questions by supporters moving forward.
Will Schofield, Mark Reddings, shout out FootyCast. WA, let's go back into footy over here. We were in our realm, but we're staying in footy. Fremantle and West Coast intra-club's been happening. Some exciting news. Mark Reddings, Will Scoville are going to be calling a game on Thursday. We got
Friday even. Yeah, I'll do Friday. You can do Thursday if you want. I'm going to go.
Is it Friday?
Mineral Resources Park Friday.
Unreal,
Yeah,
perfect. West Coast Port, is that right?
Yeah, you got the two clubs right. Yes, that's good.
It'll actually be good fun. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm just a bit worried. When you haven't done a game for 6 months, you get a little bit anxious, and obviously some new faces.
How do you go with prepping for? So you're going to be play-by-playing. I'm going to be special comments for people who don't know the way that they work. Special comments is a lot more shit talking than the play-by-play, because play-by-play you need to know every player effectively.
Which is in my world at the moment is tough.
Well, it's hard to know Port Adelaide young players, right? There's 44 guys on the list. There's probably 10 new guys that you've never seen before.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. Completely.
I think it's interesting for people. Like, how do you actually go? Do you use binoculars? How do you do your prep?
No, I definitely do binoculars. What I might do is have a look at a game on the AFL website of Port Adelaide from last year.
Oh, yeah.
And just go through. You get to know the core 18 or 20, but there's going to be a lot of new faces because of the intra-club nature of it, or the practice match.
There's
nature.
probably like 28 or 30 guys playing, right?
Yeah. So it's going to be a lot of high rotations and players out of position that you ordinarily wouldn't see. So
you do Colts PSA.
Yep.
So if you can do a Colts PSA game and you're calling kids,
but you I'll be anxious on Thursday, Friday, just because of the early in the season. You think, oh, can I do this? I was putting the washing out yesterday. I thought, I'm actually worried about this because, and I'll give you a quick example of difficulties calling footy when you're not across it. I did the Foxtel Cup going back half a dozen years ago.
That was like the state league.
Yeah, state leagues. Yeah. So there'd be times like we'd go to Darwin. We used to fly around the country. It would be myself, Ben Dixon, Adam Romanowskis, Barry Hall joined the group. So you can imagine us. So the Saturday morning was like 9 o'clock in Darwin was like a match between the Northern Territory Sharks and the Queensland Buffaloes, what we call it, for argument's sake. And maybe the other way around, the Queensland Sharks and the Northern Territory Buffaloes probably makes more sense. Anyway, so you're up there because there's an AFL match after that, and Fox just keeps their crew there, and that's what happened. So, of course, what happens on the Friday? I mean, I try and do my homework on the plane going up.
You're staying at a casino, weren't you?
No, we were staying at a nice resort. So what we do is I went for a run, and then after that, got back about 2 p.m. I don't think we didn't have 5 minutes. We weren't having a beer in our hands from then until about midnight. And, of course, everyone wants to fight Barry Hall when he's out, even though he's a nice guy. And, I got on really well with him. And Dicko's a funny bloke. So we were having a ripping time. The only downside to going out from about 4 in the afternoon to midnight or 1 o'clock when you've got a 9 o'clock game is in Darwin, if you've played there?
Yeah.
There's a fair bit of humidity.
Yes.
And so when you've got hungover, going to the ground with a suit on, it is a very long 3 hours. And when you don't know any of the players, it's an absolute minefield. So it was a good experience.
You can't lean on Barry Hall and Dicko. Who are we talking about here, Baz?
Yeah, they were out there sweating, doing their hosting stuff. It was good fun, but geez. And then, of course, when you're flying home, you've got a 2-hour way to the Qantas Club to get back to Perth.
What are you doing there?
So you just get on it again. By the time I got back to Perth, my wife said, "You look like you've been on a 12 to 14 hour bender." I said, I couldn't argue.
Well, there you go. There's the ins and outs of what it's like calling a game in the AFL, ladies and gentlemen.
That's going back a bit.
And that's a pre-season as well.
Yeah,
well, sort of. Let's talk about what's happening here in WA. Fremantle had an intra-club match. From all reports, quite good. They had quite a few guys out. Sean Darcy didn't play. Brendan Cox didn't play. Brayshaw didn't play. So they're missing quite a few guys. This intra-club game is I think I spoke about on Friday. It's the first game where you do a real prep. So Monday would have been reviews, and they would have had a really light Monday. They had main session during the week, probably on a Wednesday or a Thursday, but it's not. You're not trying to get gains. You get gains are over. So they'll be able to top them up during the season. It kind of your work rate and workflow looks like an up and down graph, but realistically, they've got no big peaks anymore in terms of their work rate. They're tapering for games now. So last week would have been the first week. I think the players would have been excited to get into that period of time. So all those players missed. Caleb Sarong was apparently best on ground. Which,
very close.
Did you see it?
No, it's a very close to best on ground. Just to the numbers,
okay,
I mean,
great.
Jager O'Meara, I'm told 25 touches and looking really good.
Fifey plays forward, so I think that's very much confirmed. He's not going to spend much time in the midfield. Might maybe come up there if there's a contested. Sean Burgoyne used to do it for Hawthorn. They used to speak about it. So the guys we've had through the footy club at West Coast, Adam Simpson, Sam Mitchell, guys that had seen what happened at Hawthorn, they used to, I think they called Sean Burgoyne the freak. And they used to just, whenever they needed to win a centre bounce, he would go in there.
So who's Silk?
No, Silk. Same thing. But they used to call him freak because they just knew if one centre bounce had to be one, if you had to pick your three guys, he was in it no matter what.
Yep.
And I think Fife could be that guy for them. They need one centre bounce, and they need like a power player, need to go in there and get a contested ball. That's the only time Fife will spend in the middle of the ground. Like, he's not going to be roaming around in the midfield, is he?
No, although we don't think he's... Yeah, I'd still like to have that if it's forward.
He's not playing mid, mate.
At all?
No, he's not playing mid. No, he's not training as a mid. They won't train him as a forward and have him kicking 1,000 goals after training and play him in the pre-season as a forward, and then come the start of the season go, you know what, it hasn't quite worked. We're going to put him in the midfield.
So you're saying if they're 4 goals down or 3 goals down at 3/4 time against St Kilda in round 1, he's been playing forward, hasn't had a huge impact. Is that the time to
I think you got to back it. No, I think you got to back him in. You can't. Like, forwards don't dominate games every game for every minute of the game. It's not how forwards work. So, especially for someone who hasn't played a lot of footy there in the last 10 years, I think it'd be poor by Freo to go, 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, it's not quite working halfway through a game and put him in the midfield. I think you got to give him 4, 5, 6 weeks pure forward. Just you're playing forward. Maybe you come in for a centre bounce, but otherwise, if you do that, you piss off forward again. It'll mess with his confidence. And you've heard him speak about his time as captain and as his time, the mental strain that has. It doesn't matter how good a player you are. It's still all mental. Like, the good players are just stronger mentally, and it's still tough though. So I think if you're throwing him all around the ground, it doesn't give him the opportunity to dominate as a forward. And as a forward, you might have 3/4 in a game where you don't, may not touch it, or you just, your marks are just off, but you leave them in there for one more quarter, and quality players like Nat Fyfe get on top of their opponent. So I'd just be very surprised. I agree with it. I think I've come around to it. I was very much Nat Fyfe midfielder, and I think he was too, right? But
it's changed. Yeah. The one area he's got to tidy up, and it's obvious, even though he's a dual Brownlow medalist, his set shot kicking hasn't been as good as. I mean, we can take a mark from anywhere, so it's just that polish, I think, that is required to give him the confidence maybe that, he doesn't have to be kicking 5-1 every week, but if he can kick, 4-2.
Yeah, 4-2, or mate, if he can hit the scoreboard 3 times a game, whether it be, look, mate, if it's 3 behinds, 1 goal, 2.
If he's kicking 2 goals a game, that's a full,
mate, if he's kicking 2 goals a game, that's a highly successful year.
Totally, 40 plus goals, take that. That's Jack Ginnivan, small forward, albeit.
Correct.
40 goals last year.
Nat Fyfe won't be the key player down in the forward line either. He should be the third tall. They should have a Josh Tracy. They should have a Matt Taberner. And Fyfe is the third guy. He shouldn't be their number 1 forward. And Jackson, of course.
And Taberner.
Yes, I said Taberner.
Oh, sorry, Taberner.
Taberner, Jackson, Tracy.
Tracy, yes.
I think those 3 guys, they're the main guys. And Fyfe is your ace in the hand of it.
I think they're very much like Collingwood in the fact that they just have to create more pressure from their forwards. They're not going to have the as you say, that key forward to kick 50 goals, I don't think, plus, which sounds not much, but in the modern era, that's a bit. So I think they're trying to spread the load.
They're talking about spreading the load. They're going to have a lot of depth. They're going to have 9 guys, 10 guys to choose from in the forward line, because it's sort of one of those forward lines you can kind of just plug and play.
But unpredictable, isn't it? Which is good.
Which is good. Of course, you got Schultz down there who's a gun small forward, but you're going to have guys down there, same as their back line. They're going to have guys that, like, Nathan Wilson apparently played really well in that. People forget about him.
He's a good distributor.
Yeah, good distributor. He's a good runner. He's quite a good leader, actually. I was surprised my time at Peel. I didn't have that opinion of him as an AFL player, but down as a waffle player, he's good with his voice. He has a bit of flair in him, bit of that white line fever. When the game needs something to happen, he'll try and make it happen. Sometimes it gets you into trouble at AFL level doing that, trying to take the game on too much. But I think he's a really good player, and look, he's going to be that guy that's bashing the door down every week.
And I admire the fact he's played a lot of footy at Peel the last couple of years.
Yeah,
and
plays well.
I don't know what his attitude is like, but I tell you what, he's in a position where I thought, easy to drop your head and just play some crap footy when you're playing waffle. When you came back to Perth,
oh no,
yeah, well, it's
correct.
That is character testing.
Yeah, so he's good. He'll be. I think it's fair to say he'll be right on that 7th, 8th defender.
Yeah.
Whether or not he makes it in first round, he's going to have a good preseason. If he does,
stay fit, because that's what stay fit.
Played a lot of
there'll
footy.
be injuries.
Played over 100 games AFL footy. I'm sure he has. So there'll be an interesting thing at Freo. What about down at West Coast? So they had their best versus the rest as well. Supposedly, younger players played very well. Campbell Chesser played on a wing, kicked a couple of goals. Ruben Ginby was very good, apparently. Elliot Yeo, not a young guy, but he's apparently midfield, little bit of halfback. That triangle is happening, I guarantee it. Ginby, Yeo, Shuey. And Shuey is going to spend a lot of time in the back line. I think Luke Shuey is a full-time backman this year. How do you feel about that?
Off halfback.
Well, that's, yeah.
No,
yeah.
I'm saying, but not
No,
deep.
no. But if you're an opposition team and you see Luke Shuey, you'd be trying to drag him deeper, I think, wouldn't you?
Yeah, we'll just... but even...
He'll be their distributor.
Coming out of defence.
Yep.
Yeah, but as you said, when it came to playing alongside him, when Mids went into defence, he was one player you could trust.
I think you'll be just surprised at Luke Shuey's defending ability. I think he's got the... Well, all you need to do to be able to defend...
Have a contest?
Yeah. And you just need to not want to be beaten. And everyone runs around out there not wanting to be beaten. And in certain circumstances, I think Dom Sheed can defend, but Dom Sheed's probably a good example. Gun contested ball winner, gun stoppage player, hates getting beaten, but you get him back onto the footy and he's just not natural. It's not like Josh Kennedy, highly competitive, hate getting beaten as a forward. If you put him in the back line,
Lost.
Mate, it'd be like having a blindfold on, running around. He's got his sticker. He would not know what is going on down there. He wouldn't make a fist with his hand. Whereas Luke Shuey, I think it's a good move by Adam Simpson, really good.
Now, let me ask you this quickly. We've talked about forwards at Fremantle. At West Coast, we know Darling, Williams to a lesser extent, given he's young and going to be out for a while. They're short on tall forwards, and we know Oscar Allen's got a bit of a hamstring issue. Tom Barras has been trialled in attack, and we know he's very good overhead, and his kicking again is probably, his goal kicking, should I say, is probably something that needs to be refined.
He's a backman.
Can I throw... Is it absolutely out of possibility, and by the sounds of it, given Simpson hasn't played him forward, is Jay McGovern, is there any scope for him to play as a forward in times of trouble?
From what I've seen and what I'm hearing, I think Jeremy McGovern's going to have one of his best years of AFL footy as a backman. I think they won't touch him. I think he'll be their centrepiece as a backman. I think they realise they've got pretty good depth as at key back. Josh Rotham's not a key back, but he can play tall. Harry Edwards, they're liking his development. Rep Bazzo has continued to develop and obviously absolutely horrific circumstances this pre-season, and they'll give him time to get back into the footy club. But as a footballer, they really, really like what he does. So ipso facto, I think they've kind of gone, well, Tom Barras, he was our best player last year as a backman.
As a backman, that's my point.
It can be dangerous, but I think they think maybe they can
more so than McGovern
keep upskilling younger guys to do Tom's role and lock down defend guys, and maybe Tom can be a swing guy. That's their logic. Do I like it? No. I think Tom Barras was their best player last year, and I think same as Nat Fyfe at Freo, you start throwing blokes around and it's all good in theory. Tom Barras, great contested mark. He can kick a ball. He can lead as a forward. His intensity's... If you watch him as a forward, he leads hard, he hits packs. He's what you want in a forward, but he's a backman, and he's your best backman. He was last year. So, I don't know. I can see exactly what they're thinking, but I think if you take it back to the player point of view and as a player, it's difficult to execute two roles. You know, you go all the way back to Adam Hunter and the swingman, and you've seen Jeremy McGovern do it at stages. There's just not many. You think about it. There's just not many guys that play in the back line and then go forward. They try to do it with Darcy Moore at Collingwood sometimes, and you know, I don't know if it works more often than it doesn't. I think you've either got to be a backman or a forward, and you know, maybe with the game on the line you can swing someone.
I remember. I think it might have been John Todd throwing Peter Sumich certainly back in defence. And
Summer wouldn't know what he's. Summer's a Josh Kennedy, great forward, one of the West Coast best.
But I'm sure he played a little bit of time in defence for West Coast. But you're right. I think we want to see, and I'm sure the club wants to see options. If Darling, take Darling and Oscar Allen. If he's not fit, one of those two, you've got an issue.
That's what they're thinking, right? Yeah. So if you didn't have both of those guys, Tom Barrass plays permanent full forward.
Yeah.
To give them an option, and then they'll have to bring in people underneath. So it probably specifies a bit that is a little weakness of the West Coast Eagles, is that depth at key position. They'll probably continue to look recruiting now. I mean, they have with Williams and Bazzo and those sorts of guys coming into the club, but they went, heavy on midfielders. Long was very good in the preseason again. He'll play round one, by the way. He's a lock forward pocket.
No, you've been bullish about him for a while.
There you go. West Coast Freo, there's an update. Will Schofield, Mark Reddings, Shelter FootyCast. Let's get Travis Kelce out and have a look at the cricket, shall we?
Maybe for you.
Did you watch I actually watched a lot of the first, bits of the play, and then I actually watched a little bit the last parts of the play. Go on, give it to me. I watched more cricket than I usually do. I did. Okay, I promise. But tell us, Skeeter, what bloody happened?
Oh, dear. Let's be honest. India over there, very tough to beat. They've got the two best spinners in tandem in the world, possibly two best bowlers in tandem in the world, even though they're spinners, and Ashwin and Jadeja. Jadeja taking 7 for... we were 1 for 60 heading into Saturday.
Well, but sitting beautifully.
Well, yeah, Travis Head opening, David Warner, your mate. And let me challenge you on one point. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, you said, no one cares about Test cricket. And I went,
yeah.
Guess what?
Sounds like me.
Guess what? If you have a look at social media, you text me when Warner... The fact that there's so much criticism and...
people care about it.
They care.
They don't like it.
They don't care. They care about Test cricket.
People want heads, mate. People, not Travis Head. They want heads.
All the selectors have got people rattling, and so too the shot making of the Australians. They, in short, they tried to. Again, neither of us have played top level cricket. They tried to use the sweep shot as an option against the spin. Now, Indian batters over there during the match very rarely went to that method. They used their feet where they're possible. But the modes of dismissal, almost like it looked preordained to try and take on the Indian spinners, as opposed to maybe a sound technique defensively, but they were very intent on sweeping. It proved a disaster.
Did they take a team hat-trick, India? Didn't Pat Cummins come out to a team hat-trick and go the slog sweep?
He went a slog sweep, but bowled first ball.
Right.
Also got the team hat-trick.
I think it may have been a team hat-trick.
Either way, I'd walked outside at one point. I was so disgusted. They lost 9 for 50.
Quick dart outside.
Didn't have any nothing on that front, Sky. But thanks for throwing that up, and I might just get you back one day on that front. You wanker.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so I turned away and I was looking. I thought this is a team that is just not playing the subcontinent. And let's be honest. I mentioned there 2 spinners. We had 2 spinners on debut in this series. Nathan Lyon bowled really well in the first innings. But, yeah, our batting was horrendous. There's only one change we can make for the next test, which is about 11 days from now. It's Cam Green comes in.
Yes.
Replaces Matt Renshaw, who I do like, but just can't play spin. He's got no idea. Top of the order, I don't think Warner's going to be available, so you're probably going to stick with Head and Khawaja. But really, put it this way. The match was lost on Saturday when Axar and Ashwin combined for a massive partnership, and their average in the Test series is more than Smith and Labuschagne. They're our 2 best batters.
Look, I don't know about cricket, but I know about team sport, and I know about tactics, and I know about coaching
and momentum.
They all exist, right, in cricket. I'm assuming. You can't tell me the Australians can't play spin because 12 overs to go in the second day, they played spin. They were 1 for 60, and they looked good against spin. The Indian bowlers weren't bowling poorly. They were making chances. So that's a mindset change. That's not a Australian can't play spin change day 3 to go out in an hour and lose nine wickets or whatever they lost for about 20 runs. That's mindset. That's like application.
Yeah, it's also technique.
They're not bad bat. Like those guys are bad.
But they're not great against spin. And that look, it was a tricky pitch. And at the end of the day, we paid the price for not having. And Mike Hussey spoke about it, Alan Border as well, about times to attack, times not to. And we just didn't play Test match cricket. I mean, I know 5 days for you is boring. That match, 2 matches over in 3 days. We had to bat time and just get ourselves 200 in front. Not up to it. We're no good over there. We've won once over there. In fact, the last time India got beaten in Delhi was when Hawthorn with Dermot Brereton in charge in 1988 knocked over Melbourne at the MCG in the grand final. That's how long ago. What's that? 12 plus 23, 35 years. So not many teams win there. Let's put that into context. But we were shite, and Pat Cummins, I thought he was weak after the match, the way he sort of said,
why does he always come across as weak? Because I agree. Why is that?
That's probably harsh.
It's not
public
weak.
persona.
Yeah, but he comes across as very deflecting. I don't think he gives a lot in the media at all.
You know, what's wrong with him coming out and saying yesterday that was unacceptable from an Australian cricket team? Our batting was poor. My shot was poor. You know what? That's what people want to hear. And be a little bit honest. You don't have to say, Matt Renshaw, for instance, no good against. But you don't have to be specific and publicly pot one of your players.
Or to argue to be the other side of this. Maybe he doesn't care what people think. Maybe he just wants to get into the media and he just wants to feed him a bit of love, and then maybe behind closed doors he's harsher.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of footy coaches are like that as well, as you know. But anyway, we are no good over in India. We've lost the Border Gavaskar Trophy again. And don't the Indian commentators love it? I mean, they seriously, we reckon we're biased, which we are. It's like it's a love-in. Every time Kohli's near the ball, it's like,
they celebrate. See, I love their fans. It's bloody.
No, their fans are great.
Kohli smacks a single, or not even a single. He just smacks it to it.
They go mental. Yeah. And they're not even drinking. They don't even drink out there. Might be vaping a bit, but that's about it.
Yeah, they can't buy beers at the stadium. We've had a live BackChat reporter who's been at the stadium, and we get an update every time he's on a tuk-tuk back to his hotel to get a beer, because he can't get beers at the stadium.
You and I wouldn't last long with no shelter.
You've got to go to work. I've got to find some shoes to put on for the day. We're done and dusted. Shelter FootyCast. You can find us on Instagram. Give us a follow over there. Watch us on YouTube. The feed that I've been talking about, not working still. So you've found us. You've listening to us, but when a new feed comes up, we'll tell you what's happened. Just watch it on socials.
We've got technical issues at the moment, Will, apparently.
Yes, I think, talk about gremlins getting into the system. Mark Reddings is officially taken over the socials for the FootyCast here on Shelter Brewing. There you go, shelterbrewing.com.au. You know what to do. See you next week.